everybody, and welcome to the Accessibility and Online Courses webinar. We're so excited to have you join us. Everybody, do you want to introduce yourselves?
Hi, my name is Sam McRae. I am a System Support Analyst for Blackboard UTO.
I am Lori Johnson. Good morning, good afternoon. I am Manager of Deaf and Hard of Hearing Services at the Disability Resource Center.
And I'm Daryl Allison. I'm Assistant Director also with the Disability Resource Center.
And I'm Julie Allen. I am an Instructional Design Specialist with ASU Online Ed+. All right, so to begin our session, we're just going to go over some objectives. By the end of this session, we hope that you'll be able to explain why accessibility matters in online courses, identify accommodations for students who are deaf or hard of hearing, identify best practices for creating accessible content, and locate technology resources related to accessibility.
So one of the reasons we talk about why accessibility matters is because people don't really realize that it's not a matter of thinking about laws and rules. It's really more a matter of thinking about the content you create and how you get it to the people who want to learn from you. Our accessibility guiding principles are that content be perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. So I'm going to go a little further and give you some examples of these. As you can see on the next picture, there's a hazy building, and anyone who can't see would not even know what was on the screen. So I'm describing everything, but there's a very hazy building. It looks like it could be a Capitol building somewhere, but we really can't see much detail. In the next picture, you see right next to it on the right that the building has a statue of a person on the top, and there's actually a U.S. flag right in the center of the building that didn't show at all on the hazy picture. So when we think about material being perceivable, we want to make sure that everyone in your class knows exactly what's going on in that picture. And we'll give you some examples of how to do that later on. On our next example, I have a PDF that has obviously been copied repeatedly and is very smudgy looking and grainy. One of the things that happens is we post things in our classes that we expect students to be able to read, and students who are using screen readers or technology to read need optical character recognition to do that. With a grainy PDF like this, the optical character recognition doesn't work and the student doesn't get the information that you're trying to share. So that's another perceivable issue. Under understandable, I have a video that I took actually off of YouTube. And the video is presented as René Descartes. It's in English. You can listen to it if you'd like. But you notice that it's captioned and you can't read the captioning. I believe it's in Bulgarian. I don't actually remember. But somebody captioned it so that their students would know what it says. But when we're providing materials to students who cannot hear what's going on the screen, we also need to make sure that there are captions or transcripts so that they can read what's going on. The next slide shows a transcript, and the transcript for that same video was also in Bulgarian. So essentially, the video is useless to an English-speaking person who can't understand Bulgarian. I'm going to pass this on to Lori and let her talk a little bit.
Okay. Now, if you have a student who is in either deaf or hard of hearing or will need some kind of access to audio-visual materials, you will typically get an email from me. At this time, my office only does transcriptions. So we are only providing a transcript, which we will email to the student, and the student will have to read along while they watch the video. We need access to the video material ahead of time so that we have time to produce this transcript. An hour video can take 2 to 3 hours to make a good quality transcript. And we also have to have time to send this transcript to the student because they're doing extra work, so they need it ahead of time. So they can't just have it the day everybody else is watching the video. So if you have an online course and you have video audio materials, if you actually caption those materials, that gives equal access to all the students in the classroom. It doesn't just benefit the deaf and hard of hearing students, it benefits all hearing populations as well. Studies have shown that 98% of students do find captioning helpful, and a large percentage of students, 75%, will use these captions as learning aids to improve comprehension, to keep focus, or to retain information. So when you're setting up your course, if you can work with your instructional designer, make sure that all of the videos you're creating are in a format that can also be captioned. A lot of times when I send my email, I'll send out directions and links to YouTube so that you can do the auto captioning, and then you can go in and edit these. Now, we ask that you go in and edit them because you're the expert in the field. You're the person who will know if a name is spelled wrong, or if there is a word that maybe is a correct English word, but it's not the word that you wanted to use. You put a lot of time and effort into your courses, and we want to make sure that everybody has the same information. So, like I said, if you can work to make sure all your videos or your lectures are captioned, but then if you pull in other video clips or other audio clips, sometimes they're old and they aren't captioned, you can contact the ADA room. Suzanne, Sebastian, and the staff over there are very good at hunting down captioned versions of films, and they will help you do that so you can put that in. If you have short video clips and they're older and they can't be captioned and they're not your property, we will make transcripts of those, but we certainly need plenty of time. And like I said, it takes time to do that. And so the sooner you get that in, the sooner we can do that. Okay, and so the responsibility for a faculty member who's designing a course is to try to caption while you're doing your lectures. That's the most efficient. Trying to do it after the fact or after production is harder. If you do not have lectures you have designed yourself, you can upload those and just let us know as soon as possible. They'll be transcribed. They will not be captioned. And as long as we get those materials ahead of time, we will do our best to make sure the student can keep up to speed with everyone else in the course.
Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about creating accessible content. One thing that you might use a lot of are Word documents. And Word documents have a lot of features built into them that you can use to make sure that they're accessible right from the start. One is using headings and spacing to organize the content in your Word documents. Rather than just highlighting something and making it bold, we recommend that you use the heading settings that are shown in that red circle on your screen and use maybe the first 3 settings. Don't go down too far. But typically you use the heading 1 time for the main heading on a page, and then headings 2 and 3, because Word will then identify those on a screen reader and allow the student to navigate the document. The other thing that's good in a Word document is that you use 12 or 14-point sans serif fonts. That means fonts without little tails on them. Those little tails can be a nightmare for the screen reading software as well as for screen enlargement software where they get kind of wonky when you're looking at them. Is a good description. You should use multiple ways to emphasize information. If you're using bold and or capital letters, also use exclamation points or asterisks. Your screen reading software will not notice if it's bold or if it's capitalized. And do not use italics because, again, that messes with screen enlargement. Using color in document design, you should be careful in how you use it. Black text on a white background is preferred, and red and green text are really problematic for many people who have color deficiencies in their vision field. Using color in document design allows you to highlight things for your students, but different students benefit in different ways. So here on the left you see that we've got course grades broken down, and we're using the circle with the pie wedges with percentages. But a person has to be able to follow the color across to the list on the side to figure out exactly what those percentages represent. On the right, we have the same information, but we have the titles of the areas right in the wedge so that each student, whether they're able to read the colors or not, is able to get the same information. Daily work, 18%. Paper 2 analysis revision, valued 20%. You want all of your students to know which way, how your assignments are weighted. That helps them so that they're ready to complete the assignments and get the grades that they deserve. When you're using charts and tables, it becomes really important to describe what the chart, table, or graph communicates to the reader. There are tools that you can allow a row to break across pages, so when you're scrolling, you still have the header or the main line on the left, if that's the one you're using. You know, those header columns and rows are really important, and not everyone can easily scroll back and forth. Even students with dexterity issues or limited use of their hands will have difficulty following a chart or table if the heading goes away when they're trying to work their way down the page. Now I'm going to give you an image, and this is a description. It says Nikola Tesla sitting in his laboratory with his magnifying transmitter. I'd like you to think about that for a couple of seconds and imagine what that looks like. Okay, now we're going to go on to the image. Was that the description is that the image you would have seen from that description? You know, what descriptive text would you use for this picture? We went a little further and considered it. You know, when you do image description, you need to add a description that describes the content of the image and format the picture with alt text. That is a specific tool in Word, and you can see on the Format Picture box, which I will admit will look different on each version of Word, but there's a spot where you click Alt Text, and you can put a title in there, Nikola Tesla sitting in his laboratory, and then the description I used is a man seated on a chair with 20-foot cylinder in front of him. On top is a round object with what appears to be lightning bolts shooting from it to a smaller cylinder on the opposite side of the room. That's a lot more descriptive than he's sitting in his lab with his magnifying transmitter. Okay? The reason we do this is because, like I said before, with the blurry building, not everyone can see the images. It's important that they're able to understand the information that you're sharing. If an image doesn't matter for your class, you could probably just say, this is an image of Nikola Tesla. But if the content of that image is important, put a good description in. Do not use screenshots purely as an alternative to text. Provide alt text that fully describes the image. You know, often we'll do a screenshot and say, go here and do this. And it doesn't work for a person who can't see the screen. When a student is using a screen reader, they will not have the same image. They'll pull up a list that tells them where links are, or maybe a list that tells them where headings are, and they won't be able to go to the right, or go to the top, or go to the bottom. So it's really important that you don't use the screenshot without the alt text explaining what's there. Accessible PDFs are really key in classes, and the best way to get an accessible PDF is to make a Microsoft Word document and save it as a PDF. It will automatically take the accessible features with it from Word. That's really key because it saves you extra time, it saves the student time trying to search for a copy they can read, and it saves the DRC time so that they can work on those documents that we just couldn't get in an accessible format in the first place. There are ways to run an accessibility check, and we have information that you'll be able to get at the end of this webinar, and it has the link how to run an accessibility check in Adobe Acrobat Pro so that you can check your PDFs and see if they're accessible. The other thing you can do is your department can purchase Adobe Acrobat Pro for you, or individuals affiliated with ASU can purchase it themselves. When you purchase it, it means that you can actually take an image PDF and ask it to convert. And it recognizes the text, converts it, and saves it in an accessible format. And that is so important for use of screen readers. One thing we like to ask you to do is to provide multiple formats. If you are using PowerPoints or Prezi or some other format, also include a Word document. If you include that Word document, then the student that doesn't have access to that PowerPoint technology will be able to read the document. If you are going to put the PowerPoint document up there, what you're going to do for the Word document is save it as an outline format. They'll be able to read it. Keep in mind, though, that if you didn't use PowerPoint headers, then your slides will not have headers. Those words will just vanish away. Also, if you use image words instead of real words, they'll vanish away. They won't show up on a screen reader. So there are a lot of tools and tips that we'll tell you about later on for how to make sure you know what you can do and what you cannot do. Double check that all of your content has been converted appropriately, because sometimes when it shifts to that outline format, it gets kind of out of alignment. So accessible use of language is another important thing. Concise text, dividing long blocks of text into columns or smaller paragraphs really helps. And keeping content simple to read and understand helps everyone. When we use rhetoric, we need to make sure we're using positive language, avoiding commands, and using language that's cooperative. Okay? We want to make sure that students are not pushed away from the materials we're sharing, but that they're invited to read it. Accessible use of language includes some positive language examples, such as, I hope you actively participate in this course because I found it is the best way to engage you in learning. If you contrast that with the negative language of the same topic, come prepared to actively participate in this course. This is the best way to engage you in learning. It's just not as inviting. We want to make sure we're inviting our students to learn. You see the second point says late work is eligible for 60% of original points. Oh, you're going to get most of your points. You should turn it in. Don't hold it back. On the other hand, late work receives a 40% reduction, makes the student feel like, why should I bother? Hyperlinks. If you have hyperlinks in your content, accurately describe where those links will take your readers. I worked with a staff person one time, and we were trying to do a training video, and we went to she went to the training video page, and then she called me into her office to help her out, because every link on the page said, view here, view here, view here. It didn't matter which video it was. So if you're using a screen reader, the screen reader will either read the header or it will read the links. And if all the links say view here, there's no way to know which one you want. So make sure all of your links actually say where they're going. We have some examples. Unclear link text examples say, click here for instructions, or learn more about color and accessibility by clicking here and here, or syllabus, PDF, Word. On the other hand, some usable links are instructions for using the web tool, in which those words are the link. Or learn more about color and accessibility, with color and accessibility as the link. Though that really clears it up. Even syllabus PDF and syllabus Word makes it clear for the student which link they really want to click on. Information in your course shell should be easy to locate too. A lot of times our students are dealing with the variety of formats that come from every instructor having their choice of how to lay things out. But if you lay them out in folders so that they are clear and easy to find, it's really helpful. I'm not going to go much into this because I haven't done this. We were going to refer you later on to Michelle Stuckey, who actually helped us put this together. She is an instructor. She knows all about how to put things in folders so you can find them.
And I will mention, too, that if you are teaching an O course and you're supported by ASU Online, we do have a standardized ASU Online template that's based on Quality Matters. And if you follow this template, it really will help students in the sense that they'll have a consistent navigation structure from course to course.
So my final reminder is treat all students as individuals. Don't assume that all students have the same disability will access the information in the same way. You may run into two students who are blind and one of them will use screen enlargement while the other one would use a screen reader and another one will have some other tools. So make sure that you're individually working with your students and having them help you with what works for them. If they will explain to you what works for them and coordinate with you in that way, you'll be able to have a much more successful class.
So I work with Blackboard UTO as a system support analyst, but I primarily focus on knowledge management and training, and I wanted to share with you folks the technical resources we have on the ASU website that will allow you to kind of apply these concepts we've been sharing with you today. So the ASU website gives access to all faculty and staff regarding knowledge-based articles that will assist you in making your courses more accessible. We have 2 articles right now that are up and live, and we're actively working on creating more in the coming year. The existing ones focus on accessible content creation, while the ones that are in progress involve discussing the range of disabilities that exist and how you can accommodate students with these disabilities. So to access these existing articles, all you have to do is go to your My ASU page and ensure that you are on your staff or faculty tab in the top right corner. So once you confirm this, you'll notice the service tab over on the top left center corner, and from there, just click there and you'll have a search engine that loads that states IT knowledge base. When you type in accessibility, you'll receive several results. Among them, there will be accessibility in Blackboard and accessible content creation. So, accessibility in Blackboard will show you the guiding principles when it comes to accessibility, as well as what assistive technologies are said and what they do. It also demonstrates how your courses can be designed to best work with these technologies. Accessible content creation will show you a series of 13 items that are commonly used in Blackboard courses. Each items like accessible documents or maybe videos will show you the best practices on how to make these items more accessible to your Blackboard course. As always, you can reach out to me or any Blackboard team member for more information, and we'll be sure to advise you on when any new knowledge articles are created.
The DRC website also has a faculty portal, and if you hover over the DRC Connect tab and click on Faculty Portal, it'll bring you to a list of students and their accommodations for all of the classes you teach. If the student has not asked to use accommodations in your class, they will probably not be listed. But if they have asked to use accommodations, you will have received a faculty notification letter. And if you lost that letter because it was the rush at the beginning of the term, you can always log in here and see who those students are and what their accommodations are. Contact any of us. You see we have Sam's email, additional resources at Accessibility ASU, the DRC Faculty Staff Portal, and we're always available and willing to help you any way that we can.
All right, so that comes to the end of our webinar. We have collected a few questions to discuss, so thank you all for submitting those. So we'll just go through them real quick. The first question is, how do I extend test time in Blackboard?
All right, I'll be happy to take that. So when you're in Blackboard, you want to go ahead and locate the exam or quiz that the students are going to be taking. It should be in any content area. First things first, you want to make sure that your edit mode is on, because that will allow you to change those settings. So whenever you're in your Blackboard course, top right corner, there's an edit mode button. If that says on, you are good to go. If it says off, just click it and that'll toggle it on. So go ahead and locate the quiz or exam in question. And once you find it, when you hover over the title of the exam, you'll see a drop-down arrow to the right of the title. Click that and you'll get a menu of options. The second one should say edit the test options. When you click edit the test options, you'll be taken to a new page, and you'll want to scroll down to about the middle of the page, and you'll see a heading that says test availability exceptions. when you get to that heading, you'll see a button that says Add Users, and when you click that button, you're going to get a list of all the student users in your course. Just go ahead and find the user that you're wanting to extend the test time for. Click the checkbox next to their name and hit Submit. Once you do that, you'll see the user under that test availability exceptions heading, and there will be an option to adjust their timer. When you click that option, you're going to want to go ahead and write down the total time you're giving the student, not just the additional time. So if the exam is 60 minutes and you're giving that student 20 additional minutes, you'll write 80, not 20. Once you do that, go ahead and scroll down to the bottom of the page, hit the Submit button, and that student is good to go. They'll get the 80 minutes they're allotted, while the rest of the students in your course get 60 minutes by default.
Cool. Thank you. And I also wanted to mention that those instructions are contained in a knowledge base article in Blackboard. So if you go to the knowledge base and there's a whole section on testing, those instructions will be there as well. And if you want to contact your instructional designer, we can send you those instructions. Great. So the next question is, how do I know if a PDF is accessible?
Well, when you open a PDF, one of the things that you can do is in Adobe Reader, you can go to the View menu, scroll to the bottom where it says Read Out Loud, turn that on, and see if it reads. If it doesn't read, it's not accessible. Beyond that, we have some links that you can use so that you can actually upload your document on a website so that it checks it for accessibility. It is not going to hold on to your document. It goes away right away, so they're not keeping your materials. But they will let you know what the accessibility of that document is and what kinds of things you might need to change. So that would be one tool, and it'll be included in the handouts at the end of this, in the materials at the end of this webinar. We'll have a link so you can get all of that information.
All right, cool, thank you. So the next question we have is, how do I make videos accessible?
Well, when I send you the email saying that you have a deaf or hard of hearing student in your class that will need to have captioning on the video, I usually will try to send that email out to you in plenty of time, hopefully before you start recording your lectures. But once you've recorded your lectures, you can upload your video to the YouTube, to a YouTube file, and then auto-generate captions from there. Once you've auto-generated those captions, if you do this in a nice, quiet room with good acoustics and you speak clearly, it probably will catch most of the words accurately and you'll be good to go. But you will want to watch the video and view the captioning to make sure all the words are the words that you actually wanted. If there are mistakes or things that need to be deleted or edited, you can go in and edit those yourself. And like I said, I send you an email and I send links with directions for all of this.
Cool. All right, thank you. So I have one a question, and it looks like it maybe came from somebody who is using a Blackboard shell, maybe created by another instructor. So the question is, my stuff's in Blackboard, so is there really anything else that I need to do? Like, basically, is it already accessible because it's in Blackboard? And so probably the best answer to that question is it depends. It depends really on the instructor or whoever created that Blackboard shell. Did they have accessibility in mind when they put the materials together? So the best thing to do is just to go through the shell using the tips that we discussed in this presentation to make sure that, for example, videos have closed captions, colors used appropriately, that, the PDFs that are included have readable text, that, text is accessible to a screen reader. You may want to check if you know the instructor. You may just want to, shoot them an email or maybe pop into their office and just ask, whether or not a check was completed. But, it's probably best not to assume. And I did want to mention as well that I don't unfortunately have the specific statistic, but there is a fairly decent percentage of students who never typically don't identify with an accessibility, an official accessibility service center, like the one we have here at ASU. So, those students will kind of just try and muddle through a course as best they can. So we really want to make sure that those materials are all fully accessible, even if we don't have, maybe if you don't get a notice from DRC. So just always a best practice to kind of go through and check those things as a best practice. Okay, cool. So the next question we have, or I should say actually, no, it's not the last question, my apologies. Can the student still participate in group projects?
Well, that depends. What I would do is, if I have group projects in my class, discuss it with the student. Depending on the disability and how that disability impacts the student, the disability may not be impacted by group projects at all. There may not be a limitation related to working with a group, while there is a limitation working with the material in a certain format. So discuss with the student what the format of the class is, what the different types of assignments will be throughout the class, and ask them if they feel there may be some limitations or some hindrances that they haven't already identified in their accommodation letter with their disability access consultant. If you want, the DAC was also available to problem solve with you, and we're happy to work with faculty anytime to listen to a description of your course and how the course lays out, to look at the description of the disability that we have and how it impacts the student, and to figure out whether there are going to be any impacts in those group assignments. And working together, I'm sure we can always find ways to work things out so that the fullness of your class is presented and the student is able to learn what they need to learn from it.
All right. So our last question is, my test questions and content in class include pictures, maps, charts, graphs, etc. What should I do? So I think the answer to that really is, again, going back and making sure that you have good alt text in place. It's really going to depend, what context you need, to describe to students. So, for example, how are you using the image? What information would you expect? Like, for example, if you're writing alt text for a student that has a visual impairment, a sighted student, what information would you expect them to glean from that image? So, if you're just displaying a graph, for example, maybe you just want to show what a trend line is. That's really all you're trying to show to students. So in which case, you would probably need to give just very limited description. Here's the x-axis, here's the y-axis, have some data points, etc. Just a quick description of what a trend line is. But if you're really trying to, you want to convey all the information that's in that graph, and you want students to know specifically what every single data point is, what the x-axis is, what the y-axis is, like they're meant to gain all the information from that graph. You'll want to, in your alt text, describe all that information. So again, just making sure that you have good alt text and that you're really getting to the heart of what it is that you want students to glean from that image. And I will also mention too, because I think it's important to mention that if you're putting together a presentation to record a lecture, just make sure that, if you're going to display a graph, that you just give a quick vocal rundown of what's in that graph. So, don't say something like, as you can see in this graph, and then, go on with your lecture. You want to just make sure you take the time to kind of describe that graph. And again, taking into account, really how much information students need. Is it just a quick description, or do you need to really go through each data point on that graph? So again, that'll save you time later on. If you're putting together a transcript, you won't have to write out a description of that graph or that chart. Students will be able to just read your text or listen to your voice and be able to get a clear picture of what it is that you're describing. All right, so I think that's everything, covered all the questions. So again, just want to thank everybody for your time. Thank you so much for attending and for listening. We really appreciate it, and we hope you find this information helpful. And please, again, feel free to reach out to all of us. We're going to have a link displayed here in just a few seconds that will take you to some resources, and we'll also have our contact information. So, we're here to help, and, and again, and any questions we get from you will kind of help us determine maybe future webinars. We do plan on offering a few more of these, so it gives us kind of a targeted idea of the type of assistance that you might need. So, again, thank you so much, and hope you all have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.